Hi guys, welcome. Thanks for joining. All right, I will give everyone another maybe minute or two to join us, and then we're gonna start. So in the meantime, just make sure you have all your supplies ready, and I'll talk about supplies in a second as well, just to make sure we're all on the same page and have everything that is needed. And in the meantime, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in chat here. What's up, party people? Not much here, just orange juice. That's my drink for the night. What is everyone else drinking? Diet Dr. Pepper. All right. I could drink that. I could go for that right now. That sounds good. A very strong coffee. Julie, what time is it where you are? Because where I am right now, it's 7 p.m. Not that there is anything wrong with coffee at 7 p.m. Absolutely nothing. But yeah, just curious. Just curious. Nice. Hot cider. Sorry, did you say hot? Hard cider. Oh, hard cider. 12 midnight. Julie. Oh, Julie. Coffee at midnight. Well, I mean, if you're planning to paint for a little bit, it sounds like a good idea, actually. Hard cider. Yeah, sounds yummy. Alrighty, guys. So hopefully we have hot cocoa. Oh, I had that last night. It was yummy. Hopefully we have everyone who was planning to join us live today. And if anyone is still missing, I hope they can get here before we get too far into this painting. But also, for those of you guys who maybe haven't painted with us before, the video is going to remain right here on our YouTube channel pretty much forever. So really, there's no rush to do it today. You can do it any day. We're not removing the video. All right, so let's go through our supplies. First thing you're going to need, of course, is a canvas. I'm using a fairly small canvas. This is 8 by 10 inch, but you're more than welcome to use a bigger size if you prefer. My instructions are not size specific, so any size that works for you works for me. All right, next thing we're gonna need here is water. You can't paint without water. It would be very tricky. And we're gonna need some paint. I'm gonna be using student grade acrylic, which is what we pretty much always do. And I'm gonna use primary colors only, and even not all primaries. Primaries also include blue, but we don't need blue today. We only need yellow, white, red, and black. And out of those colors, we're gonna mix every single color that we're gonna need today. Now that brings us to brushes. You're welcome to use absolutely any brushes for this. You can do square, rounded. The only thing I would say, we always recommend having a variety of brushes because we find that that just makes your life so much easier. So today I'm going to use a variety of rounded brushes. Again, just a personal preference. It doesn't have to, yours don't have to be rounded. You can just very well do this with a square brush as well or any other shape, but I'm going to do rounded today. And I'm going to use large, medium, and I'm going to use small brush. So a small brush, regardless of the size and shape of these two brushes, you will always need a small brush because there is plenty of fine details here, and all those fine details need to be done with a small brush. And the most important feature about this brush, it needs to have a really nice pointy tip. So as long as it has a really nice pointy tip, it will work really well. So 2 brushes of any size and shape, something medium, something large, plus 1 good small brush with a pointy tip. That's what you're gonna need. And of course, you're gonna need a paper towel or reusable fabric cloth, something to dab your brush on. Plus, we will start with a sketch. So that's why for our sketch part, you're gonna need just a regular HB pencil and hopefully an eraser just in case, because sometimes things don't go as planned right away. So it's always good to have an eraser so you can just erase whatever doesn't look right. All right, and now we're gonna move to our painting. So what we're gonna start with is a sketch. We're gonna start by making a sketch. And first thing that I will sketch is this nice curved line here. So do you see it goes from here and curves down. That's the line on which we're gonna position our trees. So I would say it starts a little bit lower than halfway through. I always like to find generally a halfway through point on my canvases. I like to put a little mark there, like a little dot, and that's for me indicator that this is a middle, because then I can refer to, and you can, like the middle of this painting is somewhere around here, right? So now we know that lower than a middle is somewhere around here, right? If this is a middle, a bit lower than a middle would be somewhere, again, super approximate, that's not a precise math. And I'm gonna start flat here, and then I'm gonna start slightly curving that line down this way. So that's for this line right here. Done. And if for whatever reason you don't have a pencil at home, that's okay. You can sketch this with your small brush and a very light gray paint as well. All right, so we have that. Now after this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sketch out where those tree trunks are gonna be positioned, or even that is not super important. Most important is we need to zone out this and that. And the reason why is, I wanna explain why right away, is do you see how vibrant those yellows are? They're super, super vibrant. If we do background around everything and then we try to add our yellow trees over this gray background, they will never be this vibrant. So we have to reserve that space for them. Yeah, we will still add a couple dabs and a couple leaves over our background, but the majority of our trees have to be created over a white canvas. So we're just gonna reserve that space for them. So I would say this, a little row of trees, it starts somewhere around here. So I would say somewhere around here, not too close to the edge, like of course reserve some space for the other tree. And it goes up, up, up until almost the top. So somewhere right here. And then it curves to the side here, right? And then it goes down until about here. So overall, the tree line on the bottom, is another line. So opposite to the direction of this one. And this one is curved, this one is pretty straight. So we can actually start by just putting one line from somewhere here to the top. Again, slightly tilted the opposite direction as your curve, but just so slightly. It doesn't have to be, there doesn't have to be a crazy tilt of any kind. And now that we have that line, we can connect all our dots. So it starts here, right? It goes until about here. Then curves around. And it goes until about here. So that's our zoned out section. So we sectioned it out to reserve it as untouched background for our trees. And another thing I want to mention before we get too far is, guys, don't make your sketch for round trees too dark. So it should be fairly light. You don't want to see any of your pencil lines once we move on to painting. You don't want them to come through underneath your paint. So just try to keep them lighter. This one you can keep a bit darker, but the rest of them, try to keep them lighter. Then we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna zone out a little tree here, and it's more like an oval or like an upside down egg shape with a more narrow side being on the bottom. And it starts at about the same area, maybe a bit lower. And just go something like that. Again, super approximately. All right, so we have reserved spaces for both of our trees. Now, as I mentioned earlier, tree trunks. So there are two options. You could pre-sketch those in advance, or you can freehand them. It is entirely up to you. I'm big fan of freehanding everything. I'm not a big fan of pre-sketching minor elements, but I know not everyone is the same. So if you would rather pre-sketch them, the goal is you don't need to draw the entire tree. You can just put one line. We're just mostly looking for a positioning, right? We're not looking for anything else. So the goal is for the distance between the trees closer to you to be bigger. And as the trees go further into the distance between them need to be decreasing. So you get the right perspective. So that's the only thing. How many trees you have here does not matter at all. So just start adding them, and whenever you run out of space, that's all. That's the end for your trees, pretty much. Again, you can do that, or you can just freehand them when the time comes along with me. Another thing I do want to very loosely sketch is this little path right here. And I mean it very, very loosely. So we're going to do it with the lightest pressure on our pencil possible, because we don't want it dark at all. And the path is actually going to start a little bit lower here. So do you see it goes like this? So we're going to do that. It goes from here to here and down. Again, super, super loose sketch, very light. Okay, so then another one starts somewhere around here, goes this way, and goes down here. All right, so again, this is our super, super loose sketch for, and again, I'm going to lighten it up for a path, because I don't want to see my pencil marks at all in the end. Ta-da! And now we can move to painting. So the first thing that we're going to start with, it's going to start with our background. We're going to start with top, and we're going to do this light gray and the dark gray. And it's going to be done in a super, super messy brush strokes. So really fun technique, very free flow, just messy, 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 messy. All right, I'm going to grab my large brush for this, but use whatever works for you guys. My canvas, I could technically even use medium, because it's not that big of a canvas. It's only 8 by 10 inch. So I could technically go with a smaller brush, but I already have this brush, so why not? Let's use it. And I always start liking with, I like starting with going with the lighter colors. So I'm going to make a super, super light gray first. That would be my first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to make a very, very light gray. So I'm going to dip my brush in the water. Dip my brush in the water. Oh my goodness, that's what I was going for. Now I'll scoop some white on the side, and I'll take just a tiny little smidge of black. Mix them up. I don't know if this is good or not, but I think I may even go lighter than this, because this seems like more of a medium light. So I may even just take some white and take a little bit of that on the side. It never hurts to start lighter than you think you need, because you can easily make it darker. The opposite is not always true. It's harder to make it lighter than it is to make it darker. Super easy to make it darker, hard to make it light. So it's always a good idea to go a little bit lighter than what you think you'll need. So I think this would be perfect, or maybe it would be a little bit too light, so that's a good color to start with. And using that color, I'm just gonna go right here, and with a nice messy brush strokes, I'm just gonna cover the entire area here. And by the way, get a little bit onto those tree zones. You don't want this harsh straight line. We're intentionally gonna try to break it up a little bit as we start working on those zones. So I'm just gonna cover it here with this color. And use okay amount of color. You don't have to use just a little bit. You don't need to do it there because we're gonna blend in other colors right away. So do you see, this is my first color. And as I mentioned earlier, it's very light. So what I'm gonna do right away is I'm gonna go right here, and I'm just gonna add a bit more on the upper side, again, in the super, super nice and messy brush strokes. So you see, it's lighter on the bottom, and then as it goes to the top, it just gets slightly darker. And I'm gonna continue with this color right here as well. Don't be afraid to edit a little too high up because, again, darker color go over lighter colors easy. Oh, excuse me. All right, and you see I'm intentionally breaking up that straight edge there as well. And then I'm gonna move to even darker color. So now I'm gonna take a bit more black and add it to the same area. If you still have some color there, you can mix a whole new one. And you see I'm going fairly dramatically darker. It's still not black, but it's a good dark gray right away. And you see I'm merging it down into my lighter gray. The same messy brushstroke technique. And then with a little bit of the same color, you can even go right here, just a tiny touch. You can even go right here and just darken it up this under the tree zone. Just a little bit. So use the dry brush technique here. Just take the smallest amount of paint on your brush. And because your bottom is still probably pretty wet, it will blend in nicely and it's going to create multiple shades. The same on this side, I'm just going to darken it up a little bit here. And then for my very top, I'm just going to go ahead. I'll be very brave and I'll take straight black. Just straight black. And I'll finish up with my straight black here. And again, I'll merge it into my dark gray the exact same way that I merged dark gray into all the other colors. And in this particular order, you can wash your brush in between. Of course, it never hurts to wash your brush in between, but also you don't need to because they're all compatible colors. So as long as you almost run out or really run out of the previous color, you don't need to wash your brush before using the next color, as long as your brush is almost dry. All right, and this is what it looks like. I know black and gray, they glare quite a bit when they're wet especially. I'm gonna show you guys like this too so you can see it better. And for anyone who wants to do edges, you might want to do them right away. It's much easier to do them right away. Again, there is no obligation to do edges at all. They're not mandatory. I just personally like doing them because I don't like unfinished edge. So if you have extra minute and you don't mind doing edges, you can just take your paint, whatever paint you used, your paint went right to the edge of your canvas, and then that paint right over your edges. Again, it does take a couple extra minutes, but depending where you're at and whether you want it, it doesn't take too long, I would say, to add it in, and it does give a really nice result, in my opinion. So you see, I'm just doing basic color matching with a few grays. Super, super simple. It's a small zone too, so you don't have to go crazy complicated here. Now I'll give you a couple of minutes for all of you to do this. I just want to do mine before my paint dries up this color, so I don't have to mix it again. And actually, I might even just finish up this with the gray and then put the trees on front, so I don't have to bring trees onto the edge. All right, all done. Fun little background. All right, let me see if anyone have any questions. Oh, you're welcome, guys. For all of you who are just joining us accidentally, who just stumbled across, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for joining. As I mentioned earlier, the video is going to stay here forever. So if you're not prepared, that's okay. You can come back and do this anytime. Thanks. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your kind words, guys. Do I think it's harder to start with a black canvas? For this painting, absolutely, yes. It is definitely harder. It is not impossible, though. You can definitely do it. It is just because there's so many vibrant colors here, such as all of those yellows that are glowing. There's some oranges that are literally glowing too, and there's a lot of white. Starting with a black canvas means you may need to use a couple layers, a couple more layers than what we will be doing for those bright colors, because white canvas works in our advantage here. It's going to give it natural glow with the grayness and everything around it. If you're starting with a black canvas, you may need to do, for all those glowing areas, you may need to do a white underlay and let it dry, or do 2 to 3 layers of yellow, let's say, because yellow is going to be our first color here, and it's going to be our last color here. So you may need to do 2 to 3 layers of yellow just to give it that brightness. So yes, definitely would be harder, but again, not impossible. I would say mostly just more time consuming. Thank you. This painting was actually created by our friend Dean Sherman. He is an amazing artist, and it does look inspired by Leonid Efremov, which I don't know if it was or not. It definitely, the technique looks inspired by that, but it wasn't created by him. It was created by Dean Sherman. And Dean graciously gave us permission to teach it for you guys, which is very kind of him. You know, there are a lot of great artists out there. There really are in the world. Can you use oils? Absolutely, you can. But I would say in oil, it would be slightly different technique. Like you can try doing the same technique that we're doing here in oil. But the thing is, I'm doing a lot of drying time in between, so certain colors don't mix. So for example, right now, I'm letting my background dry. So by the time I move to my yellow, my grays would be dry and the yellow would not mix in my gray. So it would stay more vibrant that way. With oil, because oils are much slower to dry, you may run into a problem of a little bit muddier colors. Or how you can solve it, you can actually just use a thicker layer of your paint as you're laying it, and do not go back and forth, so just it doesn't pick up that previous layer of paint from underneath. So it would be a slightly different, you will still need to make some adjustments to the technique. But yeah, it's not impossible. You just need, to keep a couple things in mind, such as drying times and so on. And yeah, I'll give you guys a couple more minutes to do this. And again, actually, I don't know if I mentioned this time or not. Even as we're live, we usually for live events, we just go at our pace, because even as we're live, you guys can rewatch this. You can rewind and rewatch sections of it. So you can go back. You don't have to, if you need a couple more minutes, just rewind it to the beginning. And after the video is done recording, after we're not live, you're going to be able to also have a button to pause it. All right. So as this continues drying, I'm going to move lower and I'm going to continue using my gray. So now we're going to work a little bit on our path with grays as well. So on our path, the technique is going to be different. We're not going to be doing those messy brush strokes. We're going to be doing horizontal brush strokes. And again, you can start with any brush. I will likely start with my large brush and at some point move to a medium. So I'm just going to take my brush. I'm going to take super light gray again. So again, starting from scratch, taking some white, putting it on a side, adding the slightest smidge of black to create nice and light gray. And with this nice and light gray, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start adding horizontal brush strokes right here. Definitely make sure your brush strokes, so mainly we want to cover this path, right, that we sketched. But definitely make sure we can go to the left and to the right from here like this. You see, it crosses the lines. So you see, I'm extending it a bit further than my path. On both sides. And that's important. And then we're going to move to a darker grays. And here's where you can continue working with a large brush. If that works for you, you can switch to a slightly smaller brush, so such as medium. So I'm going to go to, I would say about medium gray right away. I'm just going to take a bit more black, add it in, make about medium gray. And with that, I'm going to flick some from the left here. And then I'm going to start lightly flicking around the zone. So this left side. And in certain areas, I'm going to go a little bit further with that. So that's my larger brush. Now I'll actually switch to my medium brush. So I'm going to take my medium brush and I'm going to make even darker gray this time. All right, and I am going to add with the medium brush. My medium is pretty small too though, so you can even technically use a small brush for this if you prefer. It really depends how big your small brush is and how small your canvas is. Sorry, guys. I think I'm getting sick or something. I'm not sure. It's been a lot of sneezing all day. All right, so I did quite a bit of those lines on a lower part. They're smaller. All right, and I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to catch up on this. And then we'll add a couple smaller elements on our background because our larger elements are pretty much done. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. You can totally use painting paper, absolutely. We prefer using canvases, but whatever works for you. Paper works just as well. The only difference I personally find with paper, which is why I personally prefer canvas, canvas actually dries a little bit slower than paper. Paper can be, well, it also depends what brand of paper you use. There are a lot of variables. If you use like a super awesome paper, it should be just about the same. But I generally find that paper tends to be a little bit more absorbent. So sometimes it's a little bit trickier. I'm not saying always, and I'm not saying it's a big difference, but it can be a little bit trickier to paint on a paper just because it sucks in paint a little bit faster. And sometimes it doesn't let you, it doesn't give you as much time for blending as a canvas would for that reason, because it absorbs the moisture from the paint a little bit faster than canvas does. And again, disclaimer, not every paper, but the majority of it would do that. All right, and I'll give you guys a few minutes, and then we're going to move to some of our small gray elements here, such as, do you see they're little, oh, you probably can't see here. They're little tree trunks in the background. They're very, very light gray there. So we're going to move to add those. And we're going to add a bit of gray on the line. Here's a couple little light gray lines. And that's pretty much it for our background. And then we're going to move on to the beautiful, beautiful colors. And again, if you have questions, it's a good time to ask away. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Very much appreciated. So actually, let's talk about those little tree trunks in the background. Now, how many do we add? How do we add them? It doesn't matter. Just as many as you want. You don't have to specifically aim to have them in between those trees. They will align somehow in the end, and that's okay. Just generally aim to have a smaller distance between those, and you don't even have to maintain the same ratio that I explained earlier, that the distance between these trees have to be larger than the following trees, and then larger than the following. So it doesn't have to go in order that from bigger distance to smaller, 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 because we're assuming that there are many rows of trees in the background. So they would be overlapping with one another. So if this is just one row, so it's easy to track the distances and have that perspective, because those are so small and they're all in the background, and we're assuming that there are more rows than one, the same rule would not apply. So we're just going to grab small brush. We're gonna grab fairly light gray anywhere on a lighter side. It doesn't matter what specific gray you grab, just something on a lighter side. You know, and again, the lighter it is, it's always the safer bet because you can always add darker gray later. This is such a spot where you can always go back even once we finish the entire painting and just add more. It doesn't hurt it. As long as it's visible on this gray background, this is the great color. So I think for me, this should be a good color, or at least I'm hoping so. Let's add 1 or 2 tree trunks and then we'll know if we need to adjust it or not. And oh, by the way, before we even add tree trunks, let's add a bit of gray right here. So I'm going to start around this line. I'll bring it down here. I'm going to water down my gray a little bit just to make it a little more liquid so it has a better flow, because I'm using just the tip of my brush. And if your paint is too thick, you may have the best brush in the world. It's not going to give you the desired result because the paint has to be liquid enough for you to make fine lines. So that's why I always water down my paint a little bit when I try to do fine lines, especially if I do it in a dark color. All right, so right here, I'm just going to add a couple of lines. Disappear into the distance. And then I'm going to add my tree trunks. So again, as many as you want. I might even make my color a little bit lighter now that I see what it looks like. I feel that maybe a smidge too dark for my liking. Let's see. This one is good, but it's okay. Let's make something between this and that, because this is a little too dark for what I want. This is a little too light for what I want. So we'll mix them up. And we'll just add a couple. Oh, that's good. Just add a couple of vertical brush strokes here in no particular order. Great, those are trees in our distance. See, there's like one that has a branch, so you can, if you wanted, you can add a couple branches. But again, it's not something that's required. Done. I have my background trees. Happy with them. Thanks for joining, Arlene. And thanks to all of those who just joining us right now. Oh, Richard, that's nice. Yes, I love that one. I love the dragon eye painting. Hi, Vicky. Hi, everyone. And that's pretty much it for our background for now. So we don't have anything else in a gray that needed to be added. The next color we're going to move on to is going to be yellow. So I'm going to go back to my large brush for now. But you can just as well use a medium if you prefer. Either is fine. So I'm going to grab my large one. And regardless of whether you're using white canvas or black, you're going to need to mix your yellow with a little bit of white for the step. If you're using white canvas, it doesn't need to be a lot. It just has to be a little bit. And the reason why, I'll actually show you why. I'm not even going to tell you. I'll show you and tell you both. So I'm going to take straight yellow right now. And I'm going to add it right here. And you see what happens? When I add it over my gray, it's hardly visible. And it's hardly visible right now while it's wet. Once it dries, it's going to be gray with a tint of yellow. Now let me show you what happens if I add a little bit of white to it, just a little bit. So you see it's still yellow. It didn't turn into like a super pastel yellow. It's just yellow with a little bit of white. Isn't difference massive? So this is exactly why we need to add a little bit of white to our yellow, because the coverage that it provides, even over gray, is incredible. It's just a touch of yellow, of white in it. So this is why we're going to take some yellow, and we still want it super vibrant yellow. We don't want it to turn into a pastel color, but we will add a little bit of white to it. And this whole area, we're going to cover with that beautiful, super vibrant yellow. And we will bring it out of this section just a little bit onto our grays too, to merge them into one another. We did this with our grays. Once we were painting with grays, we brought our grays into that zone we sectioned out for our tree. And now we're doing the same thing with our yellow. We're adding a yellow, but we bring it out into the zone that's sectioned out for our background. And we're going to be doing this with maybe not all colors, but majority. But you can do that with all colors too. So it's not a technique that's only exclusive to yellow. Here it's a technique that we're going to use for all colors. And again, the important part, this yellow, you don't want it too light. You want it that super saturated yellow too. So don't overdo it with white. For those of you who are using white black canvas, if anyone is using black canvas, you may need to let this dry and then do it again. Or maybe first there, you may even want to add lots of white in it. Like do different proportion, a little bit of yellow, lots of white, and let it dry. And yeah, it's going to look much lighter. It's going to look a little bleached out and washed out. It's not going to look as vibrant, and that's okay, because that's your underlay. And then after it dries, go with yellow with just a touch of white in it. And if you can still see gray through it, that's okay. Allow it, because the final touches, the final layer is going to be yellow with lots of white in it. So that's the one that you're going to clean up everything with. Right now, as long as it kind of mutes that edge, it's totally fine. Right, and I'm going to do the same thing on this tree too. Oh wow, 20 by 24, that's big. Which one did you do? Which sunset painting? And guys, I will actually switch to my medium brush here. And I'll add a little bit of that color on the bottom, but with a medium brush this time. So again, I'll take some yellow on the side. I'll add just a little bit of white to it. That mixture, I'm gonna go, I would say around here. And a bit on the, and you see I'm adding a bit more than what I want to see in the end, and that's okay because all those reds and oranges, they overlap yellow no problem. So it's not gonna hurt it at all. The same with the side, all those oranges here and reds, they will overlap your yellow, so don't be afraid to bring it too far to the right if you wanted to. Oh, I know which one. Yes, I know which one. That one is beautiful. I love that one so much. And that one would look gorgeous on 20 by 24. And good for you for going big. Yeah, I can imagine. So guys, after this, I'm gonna move on to my orange. And I'm gonna go with my first shade of orange, which is gonna be a fairly light one. So you can even mix it on the same spot if you wanted to, or you can mix it on a different spot. You will still use your yellow mixed with white, with a little bit of white as a base. And to that, you're just gonna add the tiniest, tiniest smidge of red to make a nice light orange. You don't want to turn it into a full-on orange. The time will come when we will use it full-on orange. Right now, it's not that time. So I think this one is good. You see, it's on the lighter side. So that's what we want. And I'm going to go onto my trees here. I'm not going to go all the way to the end. So I'm going to cover up with this, the whole middle of this tree. Notice I'm not going right to the edge. I'm leaving a bit of that yellow more visible, at least on top and in certain spots. I'm going to continue going down here with this. I'm not going to go all the way, by the way. This is about where I stop. But I don't abruptly stop either. I do add still a couple little dabs going towards there, just not, I don't fill it in as much. So that's one color here. And on this zone, I'm coloring all the left side of it. So I'm just leaving a bit of yellow visible mostly around here. So all this I'm covering up. Then with this color, the whole thing, I'm going to color in this one. Literally the whole thing. Except, of course, don't color in all your yellow. You can bring it into your yellow, but don't cover the whole yellow. On this side, I mean, you can add some. You're not going to see it on this side. Let's just say that. So, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to add it, but also it's not super necessary either. Heck, why not? Let's add it, right? Let's do it. We're already using it. All right, so I'll give you guys just a little minute, and then we're going to move to our next orange. So the next color is also going to be orange, and then we're going to start moving to reds. Then we're going to do a straight up red, and then we're going to do darker red, and then we're going to do the darkest red, and then black. And then we'll do white highlights and light yellow highlights. And depending on how fast actually your paint dries, at one point you may need to use blow dryer, may or may not. All right, so for the next one, you can still stay with your large brush, or you can switch to medium. It really is whatever works for you. I think I may switch to medium, or at least I'll try, and then I'll see how it goes. We'll see which one works better. So now I'm just going to make more of an orangey orange. And this one, it can include some white in it if you wanted to, but it's not a requirement for this one. It can be without white either. See, this is super bright and vibrant orange. And I'm going to start with this tree here. And again, I'll do the same thing I did with my previous color. Just this time I'm applying a bit less paint and maybe again not as far. But of course you can add a couple flyaway leaves too. You can always, with every new color if you wanted to, or with every second new color if you don't want to do too much, you can bring a few on the outside. And also I like a look of this with a medium brush because they're a little bit more separate brush strokes. It gives you more of that look. We already have a really nice base, so we don't need to have as much solid color. You can have it a bit more separated. That's my orange here. And then I'll add the super vibrant orange right here. So guys, let's address this light, the night light, the one that's glowing here, that's light yellow. There are two ways you can do it. Way number one, you can avoid this zone so you don't have to cover it up later with so many layers of light yellow, or you can just pretend that it's not there, work all around this tree, and then blow dry it or let it naturally air dry, and then just add a couple layers of lighter yellow mixed with a lot of white to create that glowy spot. So either one is fine. Work around it or don't work around it. Either is no problem. So I think I'm going to work around it. I think I'm going to position it somewhere right here. Should be a good spot. So just add some of that around here. I'll bring maybe a couple spots in the background too. And this one is done too. Now I'm going to move to the bottom. And you can bring it from both sides as well. So the same way, I'll add some dots here too. Some fallen leaves underneath there. Some fallen leaves underneath here too. So very orangey, very glowy so far. Next stage, we're gonna move to reds and we're gonna really darken up our bottom. It's not gonna be that glowy in the end. Maybe some of it left, but the majority of it is gonna be much, much darker than that. So don't be alarmed by how very glowy it is. And I'll give you guys a minute and I'll just check the chat to see if there are any questions. Brian, that's a very good question. I am actually not sure. I haven't done that myself personally. What I have used to create a texture with acrylic is I use specific medium. So it's like thick medium made specifically for acrylic paint, specifically for that. So again, I haven't used plaster myself, so I wouldn't know, unfortunately. The medium that I use, it's like a clear gel. It's like a heavy body clear gel that you mix with paint, and it's done at any stage, but it does take a while to dry. So that's something to consider as well. If I'm layering here with intention of it being dry or until before I add the next color, I used to use that one at the heavy body medium for the texture of certain things. Either if I have, let's say, 24 hours for it to dry before I go back and continue working on it, or on the finishing layers. So I don't have to be touching it up too much on top of that. Yeah, Richard, great question. How do you keep your palette paints wet for so long? It's just the paint, it's the quality of paint. This paint actually doesn't dry. It dries fast, but it's very liquid naturally, so it doesn't dry too fast. But generally, don't put too much on your palette. There's nothing you can do to keep them wet for longer than they would naturally. So just, I would say, refill your paint as needed. Only put a little bit on your palette, and whenever they dry out, add more when you need more, so you don't waste them. When is acrylic medium better to use than plain water? I never use acrylic medium for acrylic, to be honest. I use water. I mean to water it down, to make it liquid. Well, I wouldn't say never. I rarely use acrylic medium. The only times when I would use the liquid medium, because there's so many different acrylic mediums, right? With different qualities and made for different things. So I assume the acrylic medium that you're referring to would be the one that liquefies acrylic paint and makes it a bit more flowy and acts like water in a way. So the only time when I would use that is when I'm layering my acrylic. For example, if I'm working on a portrait, on a human portrait, I would be using that because it's slow down. Oh my goodness, the words are leaving me today. It slows down the drying time as well. Again, if we're talking about the same medium, because again, there's so many acrylic mediums. The medium that is like water, liquidy, yeah, that's the one that usually slows down the drying time, and it layers better in a way that it gives you better transparency, a bit more even coverage. So if I were to layer the layers on a skin just to create different tones and shades, I would use that. Other than that, I would never use it. But again, it depends what you're doing with it. Yeah, the thin medium. Okay, awesome. Yeah, like an extender, pretty much. Yeah, so it depends what you need it for. I wouldn't use it for this type of painting for sure. In my opinion, that would be waste. But for painting that requires layering, or for painting that requires certain layers to be transparent, or for painting that requires a bit more blending time, because it does give you a bit more blending time as well. So portrait, that's what I would use it for. All right, so let's move to our next color here, and I'm gonna move to straight up red. And again, I'm just gonna use my medium brush here. I'm gonna go ahead and add some brush strokes. And this may look different for everyone depending on the shade of red that you have. Dean, when he was creating, I do believe that his red was a little bit darker than mine. My red is more like a magenta side. It has, yeah, it has like more of a magenta undertone. Do you see? It's like pinker. I think his red was a little bit more of, let me show you. I think it was a little bit more of that naturally. So mine would glow a little bit more right now because again, it's a slightly different shade of red naturally. But again, just use your red. I wouldn't go too crazy about mixing a particular shade for this particular stage. Just use your red. We'll mix, there's a lot more stages to come where we can mix red. And then some on the background, definitely with this. Then I'll add some on my left tree, but not a crazy amount. And of course, some on the bottom too. Okay, so it's a little bit lighter here on that color, with a bit more orange still visible. Which red again? Whichever you have. I'm using just my primary, but I was explaining that the original artist used the red that was slightly different shade than mine. His red was, I would assume by looking at the painting, it was a little bit more of that. Mine is a bit more of this. So again, it's up to you. You could definitely mix that shade, or you can just go with red that you have because the next two colors are going to be darker reds. So you're not going to see much of this one. I know it looks like a lot right now, but it wouldn't look as much in the end. Yeah, I'm not sure. Could have been cadmium red. Yeah, I have a primary red. This is what I'm using, which is like a magenta red. And it looks like that. So it's a little bit more vibrant. But again, the next two colors is what's going to dim it down a lot. So again, I wouldn't be too worried about that. But if you're just against the vibrant colors in general, you could dim this one down a little bit too. So up to you guys. And then right away, we're actually going to move to our darker red. So I'm going to take some red on the side. I'm not adding any white or anything else. Just going to take a little bit of black. Not a crazy amount. So maybe something like this. Do you see when I add it, it doesn't look black, it just looks dark red. So that's what I'm going to be using. And I'm going to add a couple dabs here with that. And just a few on the other tree as well. And of course, some on the bottom. You see it's starting to get a lot dimmer, which I mentioned it would. And right away here, you could technically do your edges too. Well, actually, let me finish here and then I'll switch a brush and do the edge. But you could start going here on the edge with this color. As you notice, I avoided my edges for now because we didn't get to the final colors yet. But because we're getting there, maybe a good idea to start doing the edges. All right, now I'm going to do my edge. I'll use my large brush for that. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense, Brian. All right, and again, I'll give you guys a minute for that, and then we'll move to our darkest color here. Darkest one from reds. All right, making the darkest one. So honestly, it's the same, it's just more black. This one should look really dark, almost like a black with a tint of red to it. So again, a mixture between red and black, just really dark this time. Do you see? I know it's on a video, it literally looks black, but in real life, it doesn't look red. It does have more tint of red to it than on a video. I don't think video picks up as much the tint of red, but it should be fairly dark. It should be really dark. And with this, I'll add some right here. Not a lot, just a bit. I'll add some right here too. I will definitely add some on the bottom. And add some on the other side. All right, and after this, we're gonna move to full on black. Yeah, it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. So with our black, we're gonna move on to our tree trunks, and we're gonna add a bit more on the path. And then we're gonna go to our light yellows and white. You can start with either. I think I personally want to start with the tree trunks. So I'm gonna take my black and I'll water down my black. And I'll take my small brush here. I'm using just the tip of my small brush. I'm gonna start with the tree on the left. So it's a group of trees. It doesn't matter how many you add. 1, 3, 5, up to you. What matters here is that you want all your trees, ideally whenever possible, to have slight gradual thinning as they go up. So wider bottom, slightly thicker top, and really fine branches. I mean, if you can accomplish it, if not, the same thickness for the tree trunk all along is fine. But ideally, you want it at least slightly thicker on the bottom. So I'm going to start my tree right here somewhere with my first tree trunk. I always start my trees from the bottom up because I can push on my brush a little bit harder, and then I slowly let it go as I go higher, and that makes it thinner. Then you can add a couple of branches coming out from it. All the branches always need to be done from the tree trunk out for the same reason. You want to push a little bit harder where you start, and then you slowly let go, and that creates that gradual thinning. So that's one, and then I'll add a few more here. And you can add some random branches peeking through the middle. All right, this one I am good with. I'm done. I'm going to move to my next ones now. So this is the ones that, as I mentioned earlier, need to have that look where they are a bit further apart, closer to us, and they get a little closer to one another as they go further down. So the first one I'll start, I would say somewhere here, but it doesn't matter. Just decide where that's going to be and edit it there. And then a couple of branches coming out from it. Again, a couple of random branches peeking through the leaves here and there. The next one, so my light, street light is going to be right here. So my next tree is going to be somewhere right here, I would say. The next one, the distance again should be a little bit closer, just a touch closer than between the first two. And then the few following ones are more disappearing, so you can even make those with gray. So you can start adding a smidge by smidge white into your black to make them gray, or to make it grayer as you continue going further down. Until they just visually disappear into the distance. And then if you wanted to right away, you can highlight your trees a little bit with orange, because then it will mix and look almost like a brown. Or you can actually make brown, it's up to you. I'm going to take my orange here. And while they're still wet, I'll just highlight them a little bit on the left with my orange. You know, they may need actually a minute. They're a little too wet to even hold the paint. So I'm just going to give them a second. I'll go back to my black then. And I'm going to add a bit of grass underneath these trees here. Just some flicky grass. Some flicks of grass from the bottom up. Just a bit, just a little bit. And then after that, I'm going to go on to this path. And I'm going to go on this section right here. I'll start with the bottom. I'm still using my watered down black. A little bit of black right here. And anywhere else where you feel like it needs it, or you could use some. So maybe a couple of fine lines around here. Maybe even some black here. All right, and now I'm going to add those highlights on my trees, because I think they're dried up a bit. So again, you can just mix brown. Brown is yellow, red, black, and white. But you can take some orange if your trees are still wet enough, because your orange will blend with black and it will create brown anyway. So either is fine. Just going to highlight our trees a little bit on the left side. You know, tree trunks are hard. Tree trunks are hard, guys. So we still have to add our street lights, but I wouldn't be adding them just yet. We have to add our light yellow first before we add them. But even before then, there's actually another thing we have to do that we haven't done yet, because we didn't have a positioning of our trees. Now that we have a positioning of our trees, we can take some gray and add a little bit of reflection of those trees. So you see a couple of trees here, you can add the reflection. You're just going to take a small brush, take a little bit of gray, and I'm going to go ahead, for example, in this one, just add a small reflection here. And I can do the same thing on this guy right here. It's nothing too crazy, just a little reflection. Just a little bit. This one would slightly be visible, I would say, in this area. It wouldn't be visible everywhere. I'm going to make that one a touch darker too. All right, then after this, I'm going to move to my light yellow. So I'm going to go back to my medium brush, and I'm going to take some white and some yellow, and I'll mix them up in a proportion that I have a ton of white in this yellow. It still should look yellow. It shouldn't start looking like barely yellow. It should visibly be yellow, but it should have a decent amount of white in it. And with this color, first I'm going to go right here underneath the street light. I'm just going to add this section. You see I'm spreading it a little bit on what's going on around as well to merge it so it doesn't look just like a circle. And then I'm going to go around this tree. And if your brush gets contaminated with all the other wet colors, then you can either wait until it's all dry and do it, or just refill it with a clean color again as needed. And my second street light is going to be, where should I position it? Maybe somewhere around here. So again, I'm going to add a base for it. And you can always add a flick or two of this color to break up the darkness of other sections. Just don't overdo it. And then I'll go on this tree and I'm going to do the edge mostly. And again, you can, bring a few in the middle to break it up a bit, but don't overdo it. You see I broke it up a little bit, but not too crazy. And then again, I'm going to go on my bottom here with this. And I'll add that bright yellow into the areas where it needs to go. I might even switch to a small brush here. I think maybe it might be a little too thick for that. And some on the other side, but just a little bit. And then you can add your street lights. So I'm going to go back to my black and I'm going to add just one straight, same width, I guess, street light. Right here. We have a little bottom. And then a little tip on a hat. Just like a little top. And then another one is going to be smaller right here. Right, and then we're going to move to white. So I'm going to take straight up white. I'm going to start by just adding my remaining pieces of street lights, so those missing pieces. And then I'm going to add a reflection from those two street lights on the ground. And that's what makes it look really, really wet, actually. This choppy, glary, straight white reflection. Same for this one, maybe not as close to it, maybe a little bit at the distance. Then after that, I'm going to take some of that white, and you can use small brush or medium brush. And I'm going to go onto the trees, and again, I'll add a couple of leaves, mostly closer to the edge in the white. Just like a little highlights. But of course, you can bring some in to break it up too. I just don't overdo it. Here, I'll just add a few around. Add a few background, just a few. And what is remaining for us, what we don't have yet at all, because this is the last step, is we don't have any leaves fallen on the ground yet. You see there are lots of fallen leaves here. We have none of them. And there are a couple leaves that you can add a bit more now here too, because they're flying away. Everything else is done. This is the only things that we have. Well, actually, I might add a bit more white around this street light, just to give it a bit more glow. But other than that, everything else is done. So those are the only things that we have left. And there's no particular order in which you have to do it. So you're going to be using the same colors for the leaves on the bottom. You can use any colors present on your painting. So you can use some yellows, you can use some reds, you can use some dark reds, you can use some oranges, or just choose one or two colors. I'm going to go with yellow, but not a crazy light yellow. Just did you remember the yellow we started with that had a little smidge of white? So I'm going to do that one. I'll mix it again. Yellow with some white, but only a smidge of white. And then with this yellow, I'll add a couple trees. Let's see if I can do it with my medium brush. If not, I'll switch to a small one. Oh yeah, my medium is fine. It has a fairly small tip, so we can do those things. So just breaking it up with a few leaves here. But again, don't overdo, less is more. Or you can start with less if you feel like it's not enough. You can always add more. If you add too much, you cannot take it back. So keep that in mind. All right, so I added some in yellow. Sure, let's do some red. Why not, right? Sorry, let's do some orange. Why not? So red, yellow, we'll add some white because we're working over the dark surface. So we need to add some white. So we'll do some orange. Just a few. I wouldn't do too many in orange here. And then let's do a few in dark red. So I'll take my red, I'll add a smidge of black. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it. All right, so I'm just gonna add some of that dark red. And maybe I'll add a couple of leaves here, just a few. All right. What else? I think that's pretty much it. I mean, the only thing I can think of that you could add, super optional if you wanted to, is you could add just a tiny smidge of white on the bottom. So for example, you could water down your white, take the tiniest little smidge of that. And if you wanted to, you could add a couple little glares in the white horizontally. But again, it's not super necessary. Thank you, Vicky. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. You're so nice. So you could add a couple of those more glares that can break everything up a touch. But again, it's not super necessary. It's very optional. All right, and after that, you're officially done. So the only thing that's left for you is to sign it. So find a good spot. And my edges are done too, by the way, which is always a bonus, right? Oh, I might need to fix this a little bit here. And it's all done. And after that, the only thing that's left is a signature. So let's sign it. Yeah, whatever you want to. You can put your initials, your name, fingerprint, whatever you want to put as your signature. And ta-da, we're done. And guys, I think I do have a link in the description of this video where you can share your results, but if not, I'll add it. I'll definitely double check as soon as we finish here to make sure that there is a link there so you can all share your results. And we can see how they turned out if you want to. If you don't want to, no pressure at all. And does anyone have questions? If you do, ask away. Thanks, guys. Oh, and to those of you guys who, again, because I remember there are a few people who just stumbled upon this video accidentally while browsing the web. For those of you guys who this is first time joining us, well, thanks for joining. We do this quite often. We go live or upload videos here on YouTube, I would say once to twice a week. So definitely feel free to subscribe and just see what's up, see what's coming up. We do schedule live streams in advance, so you can always check out what's coming up. We don't kind of give you a warning on what's going to be uploaded as a video in advance. So that's more of, happy surprise every time. But the live stream do get, bye Vicky, thanks for joining. Live stream do get scheduled in advance, so you can always check out what's coming up. And we do have Zoom events for anyone who is interested in that format more, because in that format, you can, show your painting mid-class. It allows you that ability to, verbally communicate with instructor and ask questions and show your painting to get a feedback. So if anyone is interested in that, we do that too. And I will make sure the link to our website where you can find Zoom classes is in the description of this video too. So feel free to check it out. It's different format. I know everyone has their format of preference. Which Halloween ones am I doing? I actually just did one. I don't know if you did it or not. It's here on YouTube. It's the combination between a Van Gogh Starry Night and A Nightmare Before Christmas. That was a fun one. If you haven't done that one, I would recommend it. I enjoyed doing it. It was painted by one of our friends, an amazing artist, Gregory, and he as well gave us graciously permission to teach the painting, and I loved doing it. I loved it so much. But you may have already done that one, so I don't know. Check it out. Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, guys, feel free to check out the Zoom events and check out upcoming live classes here on YouTube and see if anything is up to your liking. And please share your results with us. Please, please, please. We love seeing how they turned out. I'll make sure there's a Facebook link in the description of this video. It's a group where we encourage everyone to always share their paintings. And of course, if you enjoyed it and you just want to say thank you by tipping me, it's always, always welcomed. And it does help us artists to, stay supported, feed our families, continue doing what we do. And thank you so much, guys, for those of you who already tipped me either through this video or in advance through our website. It means a lot. It does. Yeah, thanks for joining. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, question, good question. Would you consider varnishing it with a gloss? Absolutely. So let's talk about varnishes and glosses. For anyone who is interested, for anyone who's not, it's okay, guys. Yeah, but for anyone who's interested in that discussion, yes, I always actually recommend varnishing it. And gloss for painting like this is excellent. And the reason why is maybe even semi-gloss, maybe not full-on gloss, but it's personal preference. I like both gloss and semi-gloss. Matte, I do use sometimes, but again, mostly for portraiture because I don't want my portraiture to glare too much. For landscapes, I love gloss or semi-gloss. And the reason why, especially for stuff like this, it makes it even more contrast. This looks contrast without a varnish, but if you varnish it, your colors will pop like crazy. Like gloss and semi-gloss varnish increase the contrast of your painting every single time. They make your blacks blacker and deeper. They make your whites whiter and more poppy in a way. So for contrast paintings, especially those that you don't mind having some glare on, I do recommend gloss or semi-gloss varnish. And they come in many different forms. They come in spray, they come in liquid. Again, they come in so many forms, so you can find the one that works for you, or whichever is cheaper, or whichever is nearby store. Not much different other than some people find it easier to spray and some people find it easier to brush it on. That's the only difference. The only thing, keep in mind, you do want your acrylic to be fully dry. So if you finished it today, even if it looks dry, do not varnish it today. Give it at least 24 hours. I would even give it longer than that. Because acrylic paint, even if it looks dry, it's not fully cured yet. And if you varnish it before it's fully cured, it will affect the color going forward years. I mean, it depends how long you hope to keep this painting. If you only made it for fun, I don't think it matters. But if you're hoping to have it in a good shape for the next years to come, definitely let it dry fully, like fully dry. I would even say give it a couple of days to a week just to be sure, and then varnish it. And varnish will preserve it so much better too. It makes it more scratch resistant, it makes it water resistant, it makes it everything resistant. Like for example, I would not hang a painting in an environment that will have some steam. So for example, in a kitchen, I wouldn't hang a painting unless it's fully sealed with varnish because it's gonna get damaged. So bathroom clearly too. To be honest, I wouldn't even hang acrylic painting in a bathroom most of the time for that reason, because the steam from a shower can damage it, but I would hang like a pour or something a little less damageable, or resin. But yeah, if you varnish it in a couple layers, it really does preserve it well too. So it wouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be damaged by any kind of water, any kind of stuff. Yeah, it makes it easier to dust. Absolutely. It's just good. It's good stuff. Yay. Thanks for joining, you guys. All right. I'm going to let you all finish in peace. And that was fun. Thanks for making it so fun. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.